If you were going to talk to a younger version of yourself, what would you share with that being about how you best express yourself in the world, your own knowing?
Well, I think that starts out right with a problem in the beginning is we have to understand whether we're coming from conditioning or not self, or whether we're coming from our true self. And so if I'm coming from my true self, I'm just going to be, and I'm going to pay attention to what I'm experiencing in my body in whatever situation I'm in. And I'm going to express that in a way that is hopefully beneficial for myself and for those who are around me, or the experience that I'm having. So it's not there's no pat answer, is what I'm saying. It depends on the situation, depends on the people, but it depends on what I am experiencing in my body. As you can see from my chart, completely open. And so I am reflecting everything around me all of the time. I have to be aware of that. And there are evaluators in the world who are not aware of that.
Exactly. And awareness really is the key for our career types, both the evaluator and the advisor. One of the teachers in human design, Peter Schober, calls us, instead of the non-energy type, as Ra called us, he called us awareness types. And not to say that the other types aren't aware, but that's our thing, our trip. So in order to help initiate an evaluator to be aware, how would you go about educating them on their awareness? If you have any more tips about that.
Yeah, they have to, going back to how this conversation started an hour or so ago when Leanne talked about moving from the mind, from the head, from the personality into the body, and paying attention to what is going on in your body. And that's pretty much not normal for most of us. If I were to go back to, just to give you an overview, every one of us that was born a feeling being. You expressed yourself with feeling, and that's how most of us, and unfortunately not all of us, but most of us, that's how we had our needs met before we could speak, was we expressed ourselves with feeling. And then based on our upbringing, we got pushed away from that and we got moved into the mind.
Yeah.
And so it's about coming back from the mind, back into the body, and through that awareness, expressing yourself with that feeling. Sense to you?
Yeah, it does make sense to you. And in order to link it up to what I imagine the other students might have some questions about, if you could give me some tangible body sensations that you really just, you know that this means that, or this means this kind of experience. Like, as an example, I remember studying nonviolent communication, and one of the keys there is to go into what the body sensations are, rather than going into what your judgment of or your assessment of the situation is. So getting in touch with the physical form, and I can see that that's part of your way of educating us about the temple of the spirit, the body. The body is a temple of the spirit.
Right. So for me, it's pretty simple. I wasn't always aware of it, but as I became aware of it, it's pretty simple. So when things are right for me, it's light and fluffy. Feels good. I actually get a sense of lightness, a sense of fluffiness, if you will, within my body.
Okay.
If it's not right for me, it goes dense and heavy.
Yes.
And I can literally feel the density, and I'll put it this way, I can literally feel the density getting thicker in my body, if that makes any sense. I can feel it getting heavier and thicker, and it kind of flows down from my throat. It starts to flow down through the rest of my body. And it's instant for me that I recognize this does not work for me. So, for example, I can walk into a building and I can start to feel that heavy, dense feeling based on the energy in the building, and I just turn around and walk back out.
Beautiful. So
quick.
That is a really clear indicator for evaluators. We know all evaluators will have an undefined identity and direction. So the place is the most important thing. I know when I advise people who are undefined here, I would say things like, you notice how sensitive you are to the environment and try to get them to link it to an experience. So is there anything else that gives you a tip off? A heaviness? Is there any sensation in the chest ever if something's not correct for you?
Yeah, not just in the chest, the whole body.
The whole body. Okay.
There's a density.
A density.
For me, there's a density, there's a thickness, there's a heaviness that I literally feel. And it doesn't feel good. And so that there's it's pretty simple actually when you start to cut through it. Is really, does it feel good or does it not feel good?
Got it.
And what I want to point out to people is this is we should be aware of it, but some aren't.
Right.
Is that you don't feel in your head. You only feel in your body. You can get a headache, but you don't feel in your head. You feel in your body. And it's really about tuning into that. And so it's as simple as, does it feel good? Yep, great, go with it. Oh, this feels awful. Move, change.
Oh, I love how simple you make that. And like you said, one of the keys to helping people get out of that is get them out of their head. So are there any kind of ways that you, like strategies or ways that you would describe? Do you just point it out to them? Hey, you're in your head right now, what I hear you saying? Or how does your languaging work when you're attempting to get people to be embodied?
Sure. Where are you coming from right now? Sounds like mind me. Now, and one of the things I want to add there too is the mind has a place. It's not about getting rid of it. Personality, the personality crystal has a place. It's not about getting rid of it. It's about utilizing it the way it's meant to be utilized. And so it's simply about helping people to recognize where they're coming from within themselves.
Okay, so that's a beautiful place, and it links me to wanting to ask you about when we talk about where you're coming from. That's, giving them maybe sensations in the body, and all of us have gone through the functions workshops, or not workshops, but learning about the shadow states, so we can kind of try to link what they're experiencing to maybe a place in the body down here. And when we're coming from the mind, it's there's this thinking process and there's these mental anxieties and such. So when it comes to your own internal expression of knowing, when you recognize that something is correct for you, that inner knowing, I would love to hear how you experience it, not only from a mystical, spiritual standpoint, which I can see that you definitely can convey, but also some practical, tangible experiences. What are they looking for when the knowing is clear? If you are processing something and you're really not sure, you're uncertain, right? I have lots of experience with reflectors or evaluators who have come to me, wanted something, and then they immediately changed their mind and went off in some other direction. They have, they're hooked on spontaneous decisions rather than being able to be patient and waiting for the inner knowing. So if we could give them that signpost, if you could articulate, what does inner knowing feel like to you when something's right for you?
Well, again, for me, I just know. I just have a sense. I don't know that I can articulate it to you.
Yeah.
So, for example, I can get into a situation where my body is saying to me, "This is absolutely not right for you," and then my mind goes to a place of, "Well, I'm going there anyway."
Yeah.
And then I end up. Well, I don't do that much anymore, but I can go back and I could give you, I can't count the experiences I could give you where I just knew within my body, but I didn't trust it. And so my mind would override it, and then I would have to deal with the consequences somewhere down the road.
Right.
But I knew before I got into it, I knew that it was not right. That I can't articulate, you just know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
okay.
I think what I would add to that is for the people that are coming to all of you for work, is that you have to find out where they're at initially. You have to find out how much, where they're at, and are they willing to find the courage to do what they need to do. You just heard me say that when I step into a situation now, and I have for quite a while, when I step into a situation that doesn't work for me, I leave. That sometimes takes courage.
Oh yeah, big time.
I've been at dinners. I've been at dinners with people, and I've excused myself and left right in the middle of dinner. That takes courage because you're going to be judged. They don't understand you.
Right.
You have to be able to do that, and you have to be okay with it within yourself.
Wow. That does take a lot of guts and courage. So going into you being this objective assimilation process, the person who's really designed, as Ross says, to be the cosmic judges, how do you get over this sensation of what are they going to think of me? Is there any kind of tips? Because I imagine that might have been a problem before you matured and awakened to your nature and what's correct for you, being able to just walk away. What led you to be able to do that?
What led me to being able to do that was the fact that I wasn't happy within myself.
Okay.
I wasn't at peace within myself. I was living, it came very clear to me that I was living other people's, that I was living other people's lives. And
Yes.
in fact, I said to a number of people, I'm moving on because I'm living your life, not mine.
Yes.
And yes. And so fortunately, I got to a place where, although I had a lot of not self and conditioning and lived from that for a very long time, was the essence of my design would at some point still come through. So I'm going to go back to when I was a child, and I grew up in an area where, there was a ton of family around. So every event, whether it was an anniversary or a party or whatever it was, there was 20, 30, 40 people there. And when I got to be about 5 or 6, I would go to those events and I would just go into rage. And so what I learned to do was I would leave. I would just go for a walk. I would get out of it. If I was at a home, I would go for a walk in the neighborhood. If I was at a park, if we were picnicking or at a pool, I would leave. And I would de-energize, if you will. And so, and my family, and this includes aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, they all thought I was nuts, but they let me do it because I don't remember them intervening, but they probably did and tried to get me to change and found that didn't work. So at a very young age, I learned to just go away. And then of course I would come back and I would be fine. But I was reflecting all of the energy in that group.
There it is.
And I literally had to go and get rid of that energy. And so I would. And sometimes I'd be gone 10 minutes, sometimes I'd be gone an hour. And I did that, well, I still do.
Yeah.
So that essence of my design was even bleeding through then, but I wasn't aware of it.
That's what I've heard from other evaluators, is that you display what is the frequency of the group. And what I'm hearing from you is that you being able to walk away, discharge that energy, and then coming back and you were okay. I'm wondering if that has something to do with what we hear you're here for as an evaluator, which is to uplift the energies of, whoever it is that you're around, you being at the hub or the center of your community. Do you have any idea of how that works for you, how you've seen that work for you as far as being able to uplift people's energy?
That just comes naturally, and I did it for years without even knowing it. So I was fortunate in that. Say fortunate is I had a very, very difficult time going from school into the workforce. It was awful for me. And of course I just dealt with it. But I got to a place where I did get into the workforce. It was something I didn't want to do, but I only stayed at it for 15 years, got very good at it, and lived mostly in anger and frustration and fear and resentment and disappointment and all those things from that not self. But what you do is I began to pay attention because I transferred quite a bit. I moved around, and I would get into an office and I would find that I wouldn't be there very long. And the people would start to call me Mr. They'd call me my last name. They wouldn't call me necessary. They would call me Mr. Watson. And I went, but not in a, like in a meaningful kind of way.
Yes. Yes.
So that it had some meaning to it, like we respect where you're coming from.
Yes.
And I didn't notice it initially. It happened everywhere I went, but I didn't notice it until about the third or fourth. I actually transferred 14 times.
Wow.
All across Western Canada. And it was about the third or fourth branch that I was in that I recognized, wow, they're doing it again. And so I started to pay attention to that. And so to answer your question, all I did was be.
Yes. Okay. Yep, to be you and be the word transistor keeps coming to my mind, and I don't know why, because I'm not real handy with that kind of thing. But as far as the Mr. reference, my husband has a 45, I'm a 21, and that just came naturally to me with him as well, which I never did with other partners. So as a term of respect, like you said, yeah, being the leader, if you will, I hear the anger, and this is one of the interesting things that I've been observing, and I don't have enough experience with evaluators, I say, because I haven't worked with them day in and day out like I have with the other types, because they are so rare. And in the beginning, I kept referring them out. But my question to you, because you are an evaluator with a conscious core essence that is here to be fulfilled through an innovator trait or manifesting energy, I'm wondering if maybe some of that anger might be, not being able to do the things that you need to do. Was that a source of contention?
Absolutely.
Controlled? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And there's some
Absolutely.
questions.
And
Go ahead.
Yeah, and one of the other things is that you've already heard me say that my best friend and my oldest son are innovators, and I have a tremendous relationship with both of them. I have a second son who is a express builder, and we have a wonderful relationship we have a wonderful relationship at the same time, but it's very, very different. So with the innovator, I might talk to him. We live in different parts of the country. We might talk 3 or 4 times a week. With the express builder, I might talk to him once every 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, very different.
Yet the relationship
dynamic.
Same. Yes.
And the knowing as a keynote, we can see that Brad has a lot of individual circuitry, and that's where I would lean towards as far as where the knowing is coming from. But Irene was asking if it could maybe come from 48, which is what is hidden in Brad's design. And 48 is the well. It's about depth. It's about solutions. It's having this ability to recognize or share solutions to potential problems. I wonder if that's something that people come to you for as a 5-2. Are they calling you out to rescue, save, fix, provide solutions? Is that something that you're seeing?
Oh, very much, and has been for years. But what I'm able to do is I'm able to help them learn to empower themselves. Beautiful.
Yes. That is a way of elevating, I would recognize, the energy by empowering the other rather than, this 45-21 dynamic is power with rather than power over. And by empowering another, that teach a man to fish thing, you're really giving them a gift that's precious and priceless. So I imagine that's part of the way that you fulfill your life's work in education. I'm wondering if we could transition to the key indicators. Oh, go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah, key
indicators. I just say no, you're right on.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Key indicators for an evaluator, we are told, are disappointment or surprise. So I want to dig into that a little bit deeper to make sure that the students understand where it's coming from. We are told that in a completely open strength, that is where the disappointment comes from, and the other types, the key indicator is coming from the actual strengths that they have. In this case, it's the openness. So what I was told by Darman, who taught at IHGS, he's retired now, is that the disappointment has to do in placing one's faith or hope or trust in a person rather than in oneself. Is that true for you? How do you assess what disappointment arises from?
Well, I would say that that was true way back when. And I'm going to put a little different light on this, is that being the evaluator, the reflector, is I reflect the disappointment around me. And that disappointment comes from when people meet me and they only see me for a split second. They only see me for a split second, and then they see themselves. And so I see, and what happens is they're disappointed because I'm not like them.
Oh my goodness. That's beautiful. You know, I saw a post in the Human Design System group where a generator builder was complaining about her evaluator friend and saying, why does she always compare herself to me and, you know, try to one-up me and such? Well, the evaluator friend had a 51 and, you know, is the need to be first. And what I see with you is you're a 5, and so there might be a lot of projections on you to be a certain thing. But when the other person is met with themselves, they experience the disappointment, and you too experience that disappointment in that relationship with them. Am I being clear about understanding where you're coming from?
Well, yeah, I experience it only till I have the awareness that I'm experiencing their disappointment.
Got it. Okay. And then in that case,
So I become the screen door versus the sponge.
Got it. A screen door. And
so,
then,
go ahead.
Does that mean then that that person is not correct for you if you're continually experiencing the disappointment with them?
Yes, I would move on.
Okay. And what were you going to say?
Yeah. I was going to say that back in the day, I'm going to put it this way, that because this is becoming very apparent to me, that as a reflector evaluator, and I'll say something about that here in a minute as well, is the fact that disappointment that I took on as mine all those years was the disappointment around me, but I didn't have the awareness that I was simply picking it up and reflecting it.
Got it.
I now have that awareness. And it goes the same for surprise. When I feel that surprise, it's the surprise around me.
And Peggy is saying, so you can feel so solid of who you are that you can notice their disappointment that they are not for you. And she said, wow, that answers my question.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but that's where the courage comes in, because, you know, one of the things that we make up 1% of the population and we don't fit in. And for years, I tried to fit in at my own expense. So I don't fit in anymore.
That's the shadow.
And about other people, yeah, and I don't, I come from a place of I don't care what you think of me. I used to, I don't anymore. I don't have time for it. I don't have time for it. I have to be me. I have to do what I do. And if that works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, great.
That is the thing I go, how do I do that? You know, it's one of my perhaps coming from a 21-3, kind of a weakness of what are they going to think of me? And then here you are with your 45-6, just, yeah, being able to be that role model, that. Wonderful.
I think I want to point out at this point that as I've worked with clientele, is one of the things that I found, this goes way back 20, 25 years, is that I could not, there were things that would come to me that I couldn't say to them. And then I discovered that the things that I couldn't say are the things exactly what they needed to hear. So I just started putting it out there. And then the other thing I learned with clients was they typically come to me because they want to make some change in their life. And so we would get into some area of change, and I would say, how do you feel about that change? And they go, oh, I'm ready to make it, or some such thing. And then I would say to them, so are you ready to make this change regardless of the reaction around you? And they come to an absolute halt.
Yep.
almost to a person. Why? Because they still want to fit in. They want to be liked. They want to be cared about. They want to be loved.
Yes.
And they don't see that if they become who they are, that those things may not happen. And so they stop. So, and that's what I hear you saying, Lavina, is how do I get to that place of being who I am? And you just literally have to find that courage and go there.
Oh, thank you.
I learned a great line a long time ago. What you think about me is none of my business.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for that. I feel very touched with that. I have a question from Rosie. Is the disappointment because they are having their shadows illuminated, shadows reflected back? Yeah. Does that resonate for you?
Because people, we're taught in this reality, and this is one of the things that's changing. We're taught to fit in. We're not taught to be our uniqueness. We're not taught to be our significance. We're not taught to be our brilliance. We're taught to fit in. And so when people look at me, I don't fit in because I make up 1% of the population. And they can see that right away, that they experience that my energy is very different. And they just go to that place of, wow. And that's as simple as I can put it. People look at me and go, oh, well, you're not like me. That's disappointing.
Wow. And so to continue on in these processes here, the judgmentation, you don't have it as a strength. You have only a couple of logical, although this one is very strong in you. It's part of what you're here to communicate. So when it comes to being able to reflect, is there a clear indicator for you that you're reflecting someone else rather than something about you? Or is it just that knowing thing coming up again? Like, as far as if we could help leave some breadcrumbs for our people who are trying to help a evaluator get in touch with their true nature. How do you discern the difference of what's yours and what's them with such an open design?
There isn't much of me.
Wow.
Does that help you?
That's something I would need to contemplate for a while. There isn't much of me. And that leads me to kind of maybe a more esoteric spiritual slant, in that we know you have a deeply, deeply spiritual design with a lot of these activations. I'm wondering, that identification with the I inside of your head, there isn't much of me. I wonder if you can speak more to how you discern what is me versus other. I put air quotes on the me.
Yeah. How I discern is what comes through me, not what is me, because I'm so open, so reflective. It's so. At the beginning of this session, and I'm sure at the beginning of them all, you had Leanne pull the transits up. So the transits are far more important to me than the relationships I have on this planet. The transits are far more meaningful to me than the relationships I have on this planet.
And that gets us in touch. That gets us in touch with the heart of what an evaluator is here for, to be in touch with that greater cosmos. And to make sure I bring it back to all of the BG5 properties that are on this slide, could you speak a little bit to how you work best as a solo being? I imagine if you would need to educate a fellow evaluator, what are some tips or strategies that you would share with them so that they can be empowered in their knowing about how they work best?
They have to tune into themselves. And so my environment style is solo. Now I'm involved in a number of things, and some of them are group things. But I can be involved in the group thing to the degree that I want to be involved in the group thing. But then I go back to the solo. And again, that's one of the things that we want to understand is, particularly from the experience of an evaluator, is the evaluator has to come to an understanding of themselves where they are quite content with being with themselves. And this took me, this is something I had to do. I had to literally learn to start to like myself,
Yeah.
and then love myself. And I'm now in a place where I prefer to spend time alone.
Yes.
And no, I'm not lonely.
Yeah. And we can see you have.
So, yeah, I was just going to say that you see, again, for those evaluators who are reaching out, they're simply looking for a hand with clarity. And so what I would say to all of you listening, or all of you here and all of you listening down the road, is the fact that you're not going to understand. What you can do is take a look at an evaluator's chart and learn to understand the key words and the key notes with anything. Because you're not going to understand us. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean it in an effective way, is that you simply can't understand us. The evaluator has to learn to understand themselves. And just as you do, like if you're going to go out there into the world and give of yourself, you first of all have to understand you. And you have to understand you in such a way that you have something to give.
Yeah.
And so the interesting thing is the best way you can help an evaluator is to, and I'm going to back that up, the best way you can help anybody is to be able to look at their design and speak to it.
Yeah. I like to
help them to understand what the 45 means, what the 1 means, what the 7 means, what the 48 means, what the consciousness means, what the unconsciousness means, what all the openness means. You see, for all those years, I didn't, and actually when I first got my chart, I looked at it, and pardon my language, I went, what the hell is that? But as I got into it, it just started to clarify a whole bunch of everything for me.
Yes. Yeah. And so when working with an evaluator, you really have to, what I understand of my experiences, you have to step up your knowledge of the traits and the mechanics, because what I've been told is the best way to work with an evaluator is to give them their signposts and their mapping for their lunar cycle, and to be able to know what's consistent throughout that month. And my teacher, Andrea Reka-Wolf at IHGS, said that they need about 6 months of maybe, like you said, hand-holding with clarity to find their own inner clarity. And I'm wondering if that was something that you experimented with, is following that lunar transit to recognize what your strengths were. Have you done that on a regular basis? Did that help your process?
Yeah, very much so. And it also gave me some clarity. And that's one of the things I want to talk about, is that the term evaluator doesn't work for me.
Okay, great. Glad you brought that up.
I'm very vocal about that.
Go for it.
Reflector work. So when I first got into this and I started to look at my design and I started to look at all the openness, I literally went to not all, but I went to quite a number of clients. And I said, what is it that I do for you? And they said, to a person, they said, you simplify and you clarify. So to me, I'm a clarifier. And so I can live with the evaluator, but I'm just not, it doesn't work for me. I don't see myself evaluating anything. Maybe at some point I did. What I see myself is, I'm going to go back to the key indicators of disappointment or surprise, is that I don't recall spending a good degree of time in disappointment. I do recall spending a good degree of time in anger and frustration and resentment. But that's what was going on around me. And so I started to go, well, wait a minute. So there is that reflection of that disappointment or of the surprise. Because I spent far too many years, and not only in anger, but I spent far too many years in fear. And again, not mine. It was everything that was going on around.
Yeah, exactly. Can you
So
speak
I'm
a
not
little
sure that's
bit?
helpful.
Oh no, it's wonderful. I wish I could articulate all of the linkages that are happening in my completely open ashna and relate everything to everyone what I'm seeing, but I want to keep making sure I go through the points. And I'd like to come back to this term surprise. And thank you for giving me your assessment of evaluator. I too know other reflectors that do not like that word. And so remember, everyone, that you're working with a client one-on-one most of the time. You want to use what resonates, leave anything that doesn't resonate, because you're working with an individual, and we surpass the labels. So I'd like to come back to that label of surprise, if you will. I see in our literature that we use the term delight, and I'm wondering if that lands with you. Do you ever get delighted and have that a key indicator?
Yeah, yeah. The delight lands, but again, it's the delight that I experience around me. You see, I want to, again, I don't know if I can get this across, but what I'm trying to get across is the fact that with all my openness, I'm simply reflecting everything around me.
Yes. And that links us to being
And
flexible, because there's no, in general, thematic on the software that speaks to the circuitry of the design. And because you don't have a consistent strength, a channel, if you will, for the life force energy to display, we see the term flexibility. And I imagine that really does resonate with you, because that's what we see with openness. Do you still consider yourself to be flexible, and how would you describe that? What does that mean for you?
I can fit in anywhere, provided that it works for me.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Yes, provided that it works for you.
And if it doesn't work for me, I have the flexibility to move.
Excellent. Well, see, and now that's something that I find really interesting. Oh, you were saying?
I was just going to say that I can fit in anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the flexibility comes in. But the other side of that is that if it doesn't work for me, you see, I'm going to say that for years, when it didn't work for me, I hung in there, because that's what it was. Because I didn't have the ability or the courage to step out and have them judge or whatever me, and I cared too much about that. Now I don't.
And I hear the transition that you made was being more, maybe perhaps authentic, aligned, but loving yourself enough to be able to have that boundary where you could walk away and not care what was said. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so that's kind of leading me into what I'd like to ask about this, because this is a kind of a rarer occurrence for everyone to see that Brad has a completely open energy resource. And we know that, without that energy resource, it's not knowing when enough is enough. And I'm wondering if boundaries for you as an reflector, if you relate to having to learn about holding clear boundaries, or if your energy frequency just naturally allowed you to have those boundaries because it is resistant and sampling. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's again, it's a twofold thing. In the past, I had no idea when enough was enough, and I overdid it to the point of exhaustion.
Yep.
And now, through my awareness, and it's really interesting to me that I have a real difficulty with the term non-energy, because I find through my awareness, and perhaps with my connection, this may be too esoteric for some of you, but with my connection to the bigger picture, which it's all about for me, is that I find that in many instances, I have more energy than everybody around me.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. We have a couple questions from the group. Do you resonate with our gate and trait names and the language, or do you clarify and simplify them for yourself? Have you gotten to that point where you've found better names, perhaps?
Well, I haven't necessarily found better names for them, but I don't resonate with a lot of the names, no.
Okay.
But I haven't spent a lot of time sitting and going, what really works best for me? But I do have an issue with the name.
Yeah, and Anna would like to ask you if there's a better name for reflector in the business language that you can perhaps impart to us.
Well, for me, I'm a clarifier. Now that's me. Tina's on this call. Tina is part of a Penta that I'm with. There's 5 of us, and we're all we call ourselves the 1% Council because early on we've been together now for 18, 19 months, and we meet every second week, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And we are of different ages, so we're seeing the different. We're sharing with each other and finding the different experiences, and we're actually just taking a whole look at the reflector evaluator scenario. And one of the things that came to us early on was we all kind of struggled with the name evaluator, and we were throwing different things out. So we just came up with, for us in the Penta, 1% Council.
Yeah, we've heard that. We do love that.
But for me, I'm a clarifier. So if you, and I love to keep things simple, and you can see that my life work is education, and that's what I've done forever. But I didn't realize in my early days that I was doing it to the degree that I now recognize it. My life work is education, but it's not education in terms of, let me rephrase that. It's education into the bigger picture for each one and their uniqueness.
Love that. And I want to honor our time today, so I'm going to ask you if you would like to share anything else that you can think of for this group at this time, and also invite you to join us, just like we did with Anna, for next week if you would like to, if there are questions to help field some of that. I leave that to your process. And then after that, we'll just hear if there's anything, of course, that Tina would like to ask you as well. So I'll do my best to start to wrap this up for now.
Sure. So all I would say to each and every one of you is that you're really on to something here about learning about who you are and who your family, friends, and coworkers are, and really, really pay attention to how you operate, and then really pay attention to somebody's design and what makes them up, because they're unique. So again, I'm going to come back to our 1% Council is, yes, we are all reflectors, evaluators, clarifiers, whatever, but we are all different. We are not the same. And we have different experiences. And it's really about paying attention to that. And so, and the other thing I would add is, don't try to understand from the point of view of what is an evaluator and how can I have an understanding of that. Take a look at each of the charts and start to understand the design.
Excellent. Thank you so much. There's another question from Lauren. And of course, Tina, feel free to come on. When you're watching the transits, is it a feeling that you're resonating with that creates awareness and noticing?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. Yeah. And so I just want to do one last invitation to Tina. Anything that you'd like to share or engage in Brad with at this time? We'll have more time next week too.
I just want to say thank you, Brad, and that's very clear. And I have resonated with you a lot. But I think because we have different public roles, so there are something we still are different. And about the transitions, one thing I want to share is, because I look at the transition every day, and the sun gates, for me, it's like a movie I saw every day. Like the people on the stage, and they are playing a role, and there is a story carry on. That's what the sun gates for me. Thank you. That's all.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Tina. Wonderful. So,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brad. Really appreciate your wisdom and your imparting what's most practical for us to know about the evaluator. We're not done. We do have a lot on the slides that I want you guys to look over in tandem with a little video that I'm going to share with you that walks you through how to get the Just Now transit, but from the Rave Ephemeris browser in Maya Mechanics. Most of you probably have this yet, but just to, I'll give you a little tutorial video. I just shot it yesterday with my Living Your Design Guide students, but how to get them this, our evaluator friends this, and why it's important, because that is something that's just step by step laid out in the presentation. And I want to make sure everyone's clear on that. So you can bring your questions about that next week. Also, of course, anything else you see in the presentation from my education of you through the foundation material, from what Brad shared with us today, from what Connor shares in her writing here on this presentation.
Hey, Brad, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So, can you speak to what is initiation for you? Is initiation a question? Is it just body language? And is it more so about initiating you into the correct environment, or is it initiating you to the correct person? Can you speak to that? Is that clear?
Yeah. What I'm going to say is all of the above. Does that help you, or does that just muddy the waters?
No, that's cool. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
It's all of the above. It's as I pay attention, and Leanne and Lavina and some of you have been around me long enough, you'll hear me repeat myself over and over again because it's necessary. But you'll hear me use awareness about every third word in everything I speak, because it's all, for me, it's all about awareness, and it's that initiation comes through my awareness of my experience in the moment. And that could be a person, place, a thing, whatever. And so it's all of the above, if that helps you.
Excellent.
Yep, that's awesome.
And I'll just take a moment while it's quiet. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here and the opportunity to share, because for me, it's all about the big picture, and it is all about prodding humanity to wake up to the potential that we are. And it's each one of us, and particularly through human design and BG5 and all this information that's here in front of us, it's about us as individuals learning to empower ourselves, to ourselves, for ourselves. And that's what it's all about. So Leanne just put up the word prodding. I'm not sure what other word to use, pushing, shoving. We talk about 2027, but we're already in it. And it's just, it's about waking up, period. And so I don't know if prodding is the right word, but my whole thing is there's no retirement in my life, and that's not because I'm not capable of it. It's because I got way too much energy to simply golf and ski and travel. I'll do those things when I need to and when I want to. But, I woke up 3 or 4 years ago. I literally woke up one morning and went, wow, I could live another 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I better figure out what I'm going to do. And so I'm doing it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I feel like I've been to church. This is my church. I feel very like this has been a very sacred exchange. I honor you for your witnessing and sharing and your wisdom and guidance. Thank you so, so much, Brad. Really, really, yes, like Leanne is saying, yummy. This has been amazing. So thank you all so much for being here. Much appreciation to you. Connect with us over the forums until next week. Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.